This book delves into an incisive comparison of Adolf Hitler's ascension to dictatorial power in the tumultuous prelude to World War II, juxtaposed with Donald Trump's political trajectory and Project 2025. By examining the historical, social, and political contexts that enabled their rise, we aim to elucidate patterns of leadership, nationalism, and populism. This exploration shines a light on the mechanisms of power acquisition, the rhetoric used, and the societal conditions that can either check or embolden authoritarian ambitions. In the wake of an unprecedented war that left nations staggering, the Weimar Republic emerged as an entity struggling to find its footing. Germany's defeat in 1918, compounded by the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles, had left its economy in shambles, with reparations payments exacerbating a currency that was spiraling into obscurity. Hyperinflation eroded the savings of the middle class, fueling resentment and cynicism toward democratic governance. This climate of discontent created a fertile environment for radical ideologies to seep into the mainstream, feeding off the pervasive sense of national humiliation. Among those poised to exploit such vulnerability, Adolf Hitler emerged with a fervor that seemed to channel the raw emotions of the disenchanted. A former soldier, his entry into politics saw him capitalize on the frustrations of a populace craving a sense of agency and dignity. The National Socialist German Workers' Party, or NSDAP, became the vehicle through which he promised rejuvenation, casting a vision of revitalized national pride. His rhetoric, a blend of fiery nationalism and promises of economic revival, magnified grievances while painting a scapegoat in the form of perceived internal and external enemies. Hitler's mastery extended not merely to public speaking but to the avenues of dissemination, where he wielded propaganda as an instrument of influence. He adeptly tailored his messages to different audiences, leveraging the nascent mass communication channels to spread his ideology. Whether in beer halls or large rallies, his words resonated, tapping into deep-seated fears and aspirations. Concurrently, the democratic framework of the Weimar Republic, envisioned to stabilize Germany, became its own undoing. Its electoral system, designed to be representative and inclusive, inadvertently led to political fragmentation. Coalitions became frequent and fragile, struggling to enact decisive policies. Unemployment and poverty stalked the land, and the republic was marred by a lack of trust and a perception of ineptitude. Seizing upon legislative loopholes and public disillusionment, Hitler methodically laid the groundwork for increasing his influence. Enlisting the support of key figures and institutions, he navigated legal boundaries to shield his more radical objectives, while appearing to operate within the system's confines. Though initially dismissed by many of the political elite, he maneuvered within the democratic institutions, gradually amassing power in a nation craving order amidst chaos. This was a precarious balance. On one hand, the Republic sought to uphold democratic values. On the other, it was besieged from within by political actors who saw democracy as a means to an end. Hitler's ability to manipulate these contradictions played a pivotal role in his ascent. As tensions simmered, the stability of democratic institutions wavered, signaling a foreboding shift in Germany's political landscape. This precarious political landscape did not discourage Hitler. Rather, it fueled his ambitions. His strategy was simple yet profound: weaponize the very mechanisms meant to limit power. He recognized the opportunity in Germany's volatile environment, a fatigued citizenry eager for decisive action. His growing influence was not built overnight, but through calculated moves, astute alliances, and the gradual erosion of opposition. Each political maneuver was a step toward consolidating power, from seats in the Reichstag to key positions within government. Amidst this backdrop, Hitler's charismatic appeal emerged as a formidable force. He didn't just speak to the people, he orchestrated a narrative that promised a return to prosperity. His rallies became spectacles of fervor and solidarity, fostering an illusion of unity under his banner. The masses, disillusioned by previous failures, found solace in his promises of a burgeoning future. Yet beneath the surface of this hope lay an undercurrent of division and scapegoating, tactics used to direct public frustration away from systemic issues. As his influence widened, Hitler's tactics shifted towards more overt power plays. The distinction between lawful manipulation and outright coercion began to blur. Exploiting existing politics and the weaknesses of rivals, he pushed boundaries with audacity, even as he retained a facade of compliance with democratic norms. It was a path fraught with peril, but one which he navigated with a dogged persistence that left little room for dissent. The pivotal moment arrived with the passing of the Enabling Act in 1933, which marked the end of any semblance of democracy within Germany. This legislative coup provided Hitler with the authority to enact laws without the Reichstag's consent, effectively dismantling the checks that had kept power in balance. With this act, the seeds planted amidst Weimar's chaos bore fruit of a different hue: totalitarian rule. The fall of the Weimar Republic was a cautionary tale of how democratic systems, undermined from within, can be transformed into instruments of authoritarianism. As Germany settled into its new reality under Hitler, the lessons from this tumultuous period reverberated beyond its borders, offering insights into the resilience or fragility of democratic ideals. Thus, the stage was set for a new era. An era where the power cultivated in the shadows of democracy's failure could lead to consequences far graver than the ambitions from which they were birthed. This denouement, though realized through specific events, served as a chilling reminder of the fine line separating democratic aspiration from autocratic dissent. As the 21st century unfolded, the United States found itself in the throes of profound transformation, mirroring the sense of unease that characterized Weimar Germany. Economic anxiety, stemming from the 2008 financial crisis, sowed seeds of discontent across a diverse populace. While recovery ensued, the disparities between thriving industries and struggling sectors widened, accentuating urban-rural divides and exacerbating feelings of marginalization among many Americans seeking stability in an ever-shifting economic landscape. Political polarization, once a simmering undercurrent, erupted into a defining element of American discourse. Decades of ideological entrenchment and partisan media amplified divisions, transforming policy debates into contentious battlegrounds. This polarization cultivated an environment ripe for the emergence of a figure promising to transcend traditional politics. Amid this uncertainty, Donald Trump surfaced not just as a political outsider, but as a disruptor of established norms, his candidacy challenging the status quo of both major parties. Trump's rhetoric tapped into frustrations with globalization, portraying complex economic issues as simple binaries of winners and losers. His campaign resonated with those who felt unheard by conventional political elites, offering seemingly straightforward solutions to convoluted problems. By oscillating between fiery populism and promises of economic rejuvenation, he galvanized a base seeking a leader who acknowledged and articulated their grievances. Parallel to the dynamics observed in early 20th century Germany, Trump's strategy included scapegoating certain groups. Whether through immigration policies or trade negotiations, he artfully directed public unease toward tangible targets, echoing tactics that simplified blame in situations of societal complexity. His ability to simplify and stoke these narratives contributed significantly to his sway over segments of the American populace. Cultural shifts, too, propelled Trump's ascendancy. The technological revolution, with its rapid advances and the pervasiveness of social media, redefined communication landscapes. Trump harnessed these platforms to engage directly with supporters, bypassing traditional media channels often seen as adversarial. The immediacy of social media amplified his messages, allowing for both mobilization and polarization at unprecedented speeds. As Trump maneuvered through the socio-political terrain, his influence signaled a recalibration of what was politically possible. His trajectory highlighted a potent blend of charisma, media mastery, and shrewd political instincts, a combination that would redefine not only his own fate, but set the stage for transformative questioning of America's democratic structures. As the narrative continues, further examination reveals the intricate dance between rhetoric and power in modern political discourse, with implications resonating far beyond his individual ambitions. Economic tension, exacerbated by shifting job markets and stagnant wages, underpinned a tangible unease among American workers. The disillusionment bred by the 2008 downturn may have receded, but its impact lingered in urban decay and rural neglect, carving a landscape fertile for populist seedlings. This dissatisfaction wasn't confined to economic woes. It spanned countless societal dimensions, with many questioning the equity of a system that seemed to benefit the affluent at the expense of the common citizen. Into this breach stepped Donald Trump, brandishing messages that resonated in a country yearning for authenticity. Unlike traditional politicians, his approach dismissed intricate dialogue for emotive statements, painting politics in strokes that spoke to primal concerns. He honed a narrative that made complex realities approachable, constructing villains out of ambiguity and uncertainty, thus providing voters with something and someone to confront. Trump's ability to channel grievances was amplified by his mastery of media, not as a passive observer, but as an active shaper. The platforms of social engagement, once expected to democratize information, became his battleground. Bypassing established media intermediaries, he transformed his social media presence into a direct communication tool, wielded with the impunity of a sovereign whose messaging's effectiveness lay in its blunt directness and relentless pace. These dynamics compounded a growing sense of impatience with traditional governance. For many Americans, Trump embodied the antithesis of perceived governmental stagnation, promising not gradual reform but swift overhaul. His assurances of an economic revival resonated through promises of job creation and infrastructural revival, invigorating a base-seeking tangible change. His audience longed for a champion unafraid of vested interests who could dismantle a perceived bureaucratic quagmire. In navigating these cultural waters, parallels with history's past materialized. As the American political ecosystem mirrored elements of Germany's fragility, the warning sirens of history grew louder, and yet every societal construct seemed ripe for re-evaluation, each ideology questioned in the relentless pursuit of renewed national purpose. Here lay the crux of contemporary political discourse, where aspiration and history clashed in a battle definitive for democratic endurance. Thus, as the chapter closes, we observe an America at a crossroads, its future hinging on the capacity to reconcile newfound realities with enduring values. It is a moment poised on the precipice, echoing the lessons of history. The resolution of these tensions will dictate whether the path ahead leans toward progressive light or authoritarian shadow, leaving the reins of destiny in the hands of its people. In navigating the trajectory of authoritarian ascension, the narratives diverge yet share common threads. The Enabling Act of 1933 marked a cornerstone in Hitler's consolidation of power, providing him a legal facade to obliterate democratic constraints. It allowed him to bypass the Reichstag, reshaping Germany's political landscape into his image. This legislative maneuver showcased the deft exploitation of legal frameworks to sow seeds for unchecked rule. Simultaneously, the modern American landscape witnessed a parallel, albeit distinctive, approach. Donald Trump's administration employed executive orders as instruments for advancing policy objectives, circumventing traditional legislative pathways. His bold strides were often cloaked in nationalist rhetoric, seeking to resonate deeply with a segment of the electorate hungry for change. The immediacy and unilateral nature of such decrees underscored potential vulnerabilities in democratic oversight. Project 2025 emerges as a blueprint echoing transformative aspirations. Envisioned as a sweeping revision of government mechanics, it aimed to realign bureaucratic operations to mirror the administration's ambitions. This plan was not solely about altering policies, but reshaping the fundamental relationship between the government and its citizenry, hinting at a vision markedly divergent from previous norms. The nuanced strategies employed by both leaders reflect the interplay between ambition and governance. While the mechanisms may differ, the underlying aim to concentrate power lays bare the intricacies of political maneuvering. As the legacy of the Enabling Act carried grave repercussions for Germany, the implications of America's evolving governance paradigms remain a point of speculation and concern. Within democratic confines, the balance between authority and accountability is perennially tested. The dance of rhetoric, legality, and public sentiment plays out on a stage where history offers lessons and warnings in equal measure. The shadows of past authoritarian paths haunt the present, a reminder etched into the framework of governance. This narrative masterfully unravels against the backdrop of evolving societal norms and expectations, showcasing the delicate equilibrium sustaining democratic institutions. The conversation surrounding these mechanisms invites contemplation of not just their immediate impact, but the enduring influence they wield in shaping future governance. In both historical and contemporary contexts, the allure of unilateral power finds fertile soil within times of crisis. Hitler's passage of the Enabling Act secured him a veneer of legitimacy, a means to actuate his vision without the cumbersome obstacle of parliamentary debate. Under the guise of necessity, he crafted an apparatus of control, meticulously silencing detractors under the pretense of national exigency. The Reichstag's role faded, replaced by edicts that streamlined authority into the hands of a single man willing to redefine the state's very essence. While Hitler's approach depended largely upon a legislative takeover within Weimar's established systems, Trump's methods leaned heavily on the more modern equivalent executive orders. These instruments allowed him to forge new paths within the framework of governance, reshaping the socio-political terrain with strokes of pen and decree. Executive orders expedited actions that might otherwise flounder within the morass of bicameral compromise, functioning as assertive assertions of dauntless political will in an era marked by gridlock. Yet, beneath the surface lay the intricate dance of public perception and strategic communication. Both leaders intuitively understood the power of narrative control, shaping public discourse to parallel their political maneuvers. For Hitler, the radical restructuring of state mechanics was couched in promises of restoration and empowerment. Trump, in turn, amplified themes of national revival, often encased in rhetoric that struck chords with an audience eager for disruption amidst cultural trepidation. The innovative strategies shared among these figures underscore a fundamental tension within democracies, the friction between expedience and process. While democratic institutions inherently foster debate and inclusion, they are also susceptible to subversion via seemingly legitimate pathways. In riveting times of upheaval, the principles once guarding against excess can be wielded to consolidate rather than disperse authority, offering a stark reminder of governance's precarious balance. For observers and participants alike, this tension invites reflection. The susceptibility of democratic systems to internal manipulation compels a deeper understanding of the forces at play. The cautionary tale unwinds within the folds of history, illuminating avenues where ambition and structural vulnerabilities converge. In examining these dynamics, one is tasked with considering how the interwoven themes of power and governance continue to shape societies, challenging assumptions about the stability and resilience of democratic ideals. As the chapter closes, the descent of the Weimar system and the American experiment's current inflections stand as potent reminders. The focus now shifts beyond mere recounting to active contemplation, prompting an engaged dialogue on the measures necessary to fortify democratic institutions against the encroachment of unilateral ambition. The reflection on these historical and modern trajectories becomes not just an academic exercise, but a crucial endeavor in perpetuating the legacy of democracy's promise. As history's echoes reverberate, the persistence of hope within democratic processes emerges as both a testament and a caution. The lessons from past authoritarian rises offer a stark reminder of the delicate nature of freedoms we often consider unassailable. The fragility of democracy, once fortified by the belief in its permanence, requires constant vigilance against the allures of simplicity and certainty offered by more authoritarian alternatives. The presence of charismatic leaders who wield narratives for galvanizing public sentiment is not new. However, the ability to navigate modern political landscapes with astute media manipulation amplifies their reach. In observing Hitler and Trump's trajectories, the similarities in their appeals and rhetoric become apparent. They capitalized on societal frustrations, transforming fear into a unifying call for strength. Yet such appeals can eclipse the intricacies of democratic dialogue and debate. The role of citizenry and institutions stands paramount in preserving democratic norms. Awareness and engagement, both in historical context and contemporary application, function as bulwarks against the erosion of civil liberties. As these reflections unfold, the emphasis shifts from passive lesson learning to active participation in safeguarding democratic frameworks. In understanding our past, we find the tools necessary to preserve our future. Institutions, traditionally seen as gatekeepers of democracy, have faced unprecedented tests. The impact of executive actions and political maneuvers spotlight the need for robust checks and balances. These systems must withstand not just forceful personalities, but a changing global dialogue that tests their resilience. Thus, reinforcing these democratic institutions is crucial for enduring the pressures of populist rhetoric. History's patterns resurface as guideposts. Recognizing these familiar trajectories empowers societies to anticipate and counteract potential threats. The shared responsibility of citizens and their leaders to maintain transparency and accountability ensures that the democratic fabric remains intact. As this exploration evolves, the ongoing narrative nudges towards an introspective yet forward-looking dialogue. The past shadows serve as a guiding force, yet the agency remains with present generations to define their democratic legacy. The dialogue continues, inviting a reevaluation of the safeguards essential for a vibrant future, remaining alert to ensure history never repeats in its most foreboding forms. The resonance of history is a poignant reminder that democracy is not an unassailable fortress, but a delicate construct needing constant care and vigilance. As we examine the trajectories of Hitler and Trump, what becomes evident is the ease with which democracies can become vulnerable to authoritarian inclinations, particularly when swayed by charismatic leaders who exploit societal fears and insecurities. Their strategies highlight how the protestations of democracy can be weaponized, transforming public discontent into fertile ground for consolidating power. Both figures exposed and manipulated fractures within their respective societies, leveraging economic anxieties and nationalistic fervor. Whether by exploiting legal systems or bypassing established channels of governance, their paths underscore a critical need for an informed and engaged citizenry. Democracy thrives not merely on the structures that support it, but on the willingness of people to defend and nurture it against complacency. As we reflect on these historical paradigms, the responsibility of safeguarding democratic values must be shared between institutions and individuals. Robust civic education becomes a tool of empowerment, equipping citizens with the knowledge needed to discern and challenge rhetoric that threatens to erode democratic norms. This engagement fosters a society grounded in dialogue and inclusivity, ready to resist the seductive pull of authoritarian promises. Institutions, too, must rise to the occasion, fortifying mechanisms that ensure accountability and transparency. The resilience of democracy hinges on their capacity to adapt and withstand the complexities of modern political landscapes. By reinforcing the checks and balances within governance frameworks, societies can prevent the concentration of power that inevitably tilts towards authoritarianism. In navigating this precarious balance, historical lessons serve as guideposts illuminating paths of both peril and promise. To inhabit a democratic world is to commit to its defense, championing its ideals not just in times of tranquility, but amidst uncertainty and change. As this book closes, may its insights empower readers to actively engage in shaping a democratic future resilient against the allure of despotic certainty.